Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us on The Explainer tonight. Our conversation on the program is with NARC-Kenya, Martha Karua, who's the NARC-Kenya party leader, and she's still with me, so please do send in your comments, your questions. Hashtag is The Explainer at Citizen TV Kenya and at Yvonne Okwara, and she is still with us here on the program. So when we started this conversation in the beginning, we were talking about the cabinet nominations and the process in Parliament. I would want to know your thoughts on the vetting process. Much has been said about it. I know you said no mandate and, the illegitimate institution, but what were your thoughts on how the vetting was conducted?
Like I said, the vetting was really a circus, not what people expected. Kenyans don't expect people to just routinely be asked how much they are worth. They are not questioned about their sources of wealth. Those who have served and who 2 years ago gave us what they thought was their net worth, some had accelerated their worth astronomically by 100%. I don't think properties values have gone up by 100%. You'd expect follow-up questions. For the minister, former CS for Interior Kindiki, you would expect probing questions about the conduct of the police, about the deaths, about deployment of snipers on the roof of Parliament and other buildings. And we know snipers are not for calming crowds or for quelling demonstrations. Snipers are long-range shooters who shoot with accuracy, and they are deployed to kill. When Kindiki said that for the police, shooting is a personal choice, he failed even as a lawyer, leave alone as a CS, to mention that the law frowns upon use of excessive force. How can it be a personal choice for any officer to shoot an unarmed demonstrator, a young man dancing outside Parliament, or even the people who accessed Parliament unarmed, youth who were just happy to step into Parliament? When you give an account like that and seem to endorse mass murder, then we expect probing questions, not a sweetheart deal. And basically, each one of those so-called nominees were given a sweetheart deal. No probing questions. That is what I call a circus. It's making a mockery of the vetting process. Kenyans had sent very many questions. I think the real vetting has been done by Gen Z online, and a majority, if not all, of all those nominees have been found unfit to serve.
All right.
Then there is that little matter of those who had been in cabinet before. They were dismissed. You're not dismissed for performing well. You're dismissed for falling short or for having violated the law. So Mr. William Ruto, by dismissing them, actually condemned them as unfit to serve in his cabinet. So all those are my views.
Okay,
and I think those nominations are a diversionary tactic.
Okay, and yet you've talked about the sort of returnees to the cabinet, if we can call them that. But yet there were also new additions to the cabinet. And these were leading lights of the Azimio coalition and, members of the leadership of the ODM party. Just yesterday, Raila Odinga said that he rescued the Kenya Kwanza coalition and, in essence, rescued President Ruto by sort of nominating those people to the cabinet. Your thoughts on these members of ODM, now nominees in cabinet?
A very interesting confession by my former boss in the presidential elections and in Azimio, Raila Odinga. He first denied that ODM had entered government, and he said they had entered as individuals. Now what he said yesterday makes it obvious that he actually nominated them and gave them over to government. Whether from Azimio, ODM, or any quotas, nominees are supposed to be vetted, taken to task on their previous conduct, on any public position held before, and on their wealth or the lack of it. And I think there were no serious probing questions, sweetheart deals. I had said that of all of them. And then I would like to say that when the opposition or part of it enters government, they cannot enter through the back door. The law is very clear. The constitutional design is such that it recognizes the majority side, minority side is the opposition. ODM within Azimio was the leading opposition coalition party, and Azimio was the minority party. When ODM enters government and seems to deny through its party leader, then it wants to have its cake and eat it, because it's going to be part of government and to continue to hold minority seats that should be held by the next largest party, say Wiper. What that means is that the Public Accounts Committees and the Public Invests Committee, which are supposed to be chaired via the standing orders by the minority side, it means we lower the bar on accountability. You can imagine an ODM person questioning people, CSs, who were his party bosses just a minute ago. They may have relinquished their party posts, but their relationship is of a senior person and a junior person within the party.
Yeah.
Even if they have left, that effect is there. ODM loses that moral right to hold to account or be a watchdog to CSs from their own party.
Okay,
that should be held by somebody else.
So let me ask you this then. You know, the term broad-based government is you know, now being used. So what do you make of that? That term and that phrase. How would you describe the state of our democracy right now?
I would say that whereas the Gen Z have been asking for transparency and accountability, these appointments have lowered the bar because they seek to violate the design of the Constitution, the letter and spirit. They also seek to lower the bar on accountability. It's a sort of an insider trading, a sweetheart deal, where partners in government, because this so-called broad-based government is as broad as KK and ODM, because that's where it stops. It's the KK coalition and a new found whatever ODM. And I am saying, without entering into a formal coalition, this is a come-we-stay marriage, which is not allowed by the law. So to begin with, it's illegal. It's unconstitutional, and it will lead to unconstitutionality in the conduct of the business of parliament, where a party in government continues to chair watchdog committees, namely public accounts and public investment committees. There are numerous of each of those committees. So
what do you think changed? Because Martha, you were Raila Odinga's running mate less than 2 years ago. Presumably you had shared values and shared ideals. So what do you make of this about turn with him, and you know, for somebody that you were willing to run a government with not too long ago?
I think only him can explain his change of heart, especially because he's one person who worked hard to get the 2010 Constitution. The journey for getting this Constitution, we have worked together in Parliament as opposition. At one time, he stood with the government when he joined President Moi. We remained in the opposition. So we have worked together, but there are times when we have not walked exactly the same path. It's only him who can explain why at this time he will allow himself and his party to lower the bar on accountability. It is not illegal or unconstitutional to enter government, but through the front door, not through the back door, by forming a coalition. And the law allows a post-election coalition. But to have one leg in government, one leg in the opposition, that's basically blocking and watering down the accountability, the checks and balances that are given by the Constitution. And I would urge him and his party to reconsider these issues.
How do you feel about his decision and his move and his recent statements?
Obviously disappointed, and as you saw, NARC-Kenya gave notice to withdraw from Azimio. The notice matures in 3 months, but in the meantime, we will not participate in anything to do with Azimio. We do not want to be party to having one leg this side, one leg the other. We do not want to support what we believe is untenable. But our discontent started earlier than this move. If you remember, in December, NARC-Kenya rejected wholly the NADCO report, while some of our partners in Azimio accepted it as a good step. So from that time, we have really been sort of estranged. This was the last straw that broke the camel's back.
So, you know, like you said, this was something because we had seen you stopped attending meetings, even, you know, as early as last year. You rejected the NADCO report. Mm-hmm. So where do you stand now? What is your political philosophy at this point, Martha? We've seen you talk about Kamwene at one point. You attended Limuru 3 meeting. You've disowned the NADCO report. It would seem...
Organized and attended.
Sorry? Sorry, say that again?
Organized and attended.
You organized and attended that, yes.
I not only attended.
Right, and organized. It would seem, you know, in 2 short years, a lot has happened, even with you and NARC-Kenya's position. What would you term as your political philosophy right now? And where does that fall in the current circumstances we have in the country?
My philosophy has not changed. I'm out of government, therefore opposition. And I'm opposition, and NARC-Kenya is opposition outside the coalition, and we were still opposition inside the coalition. The position does not change at all, and it is not a must that we be part of any coalition. No party is formed to look for a coalition. A party is formed to seek power. In January, when we had not left Azimio yet, we had agreed that each party goes and strengthens itself, so that the strength of each party becomes the strength of Azimio. Right now, we are on that journey of strengthening ourselves alone, and now that we pulled out of the coalition, we will continue to do so. We have friends in the opposition. If we feel that there are issues we can stand together, we would not hesitate, but we do not need to be together in order to raise issues. Even in the period 2017, 2022, NARC-Kenya stood alone and was able to do a lot. We were a voice opposing the Constitution, with not the Constitution, but opposing BBI within Linda Katiba. We were a voice when the coronavirus came, because again, opposition had been muted due to the friendship between Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta. So we have occupied our space even as a party, punching more than we are considered, what is considered to be our weight.
Okay, I'd like to speak a little bit about that, because you've talked about a party wanting to, of course, seek power, and you'll continue to play the role of the opposition. But Martha, it would seem you're charting somewhat of a lonely path right now when we see other members of the Azimio coalition who disagree with a broad-based government seem to be coalescing around Kalonzo Musyoka from the Wiper Party. You are alone. How do you propose to be able to play the role of the opposition, Martha, Martha, when NARC-Kenya has no members in the National Assembly, no members at the Senate, perhaps you can tell us about how many members of County Assembly you have. How do you feel you will play the role of the opposition or the minority or holding the government to account with no numbers in Parliament?
May I remind you, Yvonne, that even between 2017 and 2022, we had no member of Parliament. We only had MCAs. Our voice was louder than those numbers. Even now, when I was within the coalition, that did not give me members of Parliament. NARC-Kenya still had no members of Parliament. Our voice, even in those Azimio activities, was louder than our numbers. And by the way, we have 18 MCAs. And we are content with that for now, and we will continue growing the party. The stand people take, the weight of their voice can sometimes be beyond the numbers. When you subvert democracy and the Constitution in spite of your numbers, as is being done by both KK and their new partners, ODM, the numbers don't commend themselves for anything. That's why we have parties with such huge numbers in that parliament. They cannot save the people from the problems they are having. Those numbers did not help us in the vetting that has just taken place. They have not helped this regime that is tone deaf and cannot hear the cries of the people and ignored people completely as relates to the Finance Act 2024 and even 2023, which has just been turned down by the court. So it's not numbers that will matter out here. It is the voice of the people. And finally, even in the period, in the runner-up to the 2022 elections, NARC-Kenya was a standalone. Others had first gone on to spearhead BBI. When we came back together as Azimio, we were still able to find our space and won the slot of being running mate. I don't feel threatened, and NARC-Kenya does not feel threatened. We are on a journey. Watch this space. About Kamwene and Limuru 3, it is not wrong to organize around communities, so long as that organization is not intended to hurt the rights of others. The issues we were raising in Mount Kenya, which were about the very same finance bill 2024, which was later to be withdrawn, were issues affecting the rest of Kenya. But Mount Kenya seemed to be under psychological lock and even physical lock, because during the Azimio demonstrations, we were completely barred from penetrating Mount Kenya. After the Limuru 3, I can say that that cloud hanging over Mount Kenya psychologically seems to have lifted, and you have seen Mount Kenya largely supporting or standing with the rest of Kenyans to resist oppression. It's a good day to see Kenyans united to resist oppression.
Martha, that statement around coalescing around communities, some would say would sound rather similar to what the Deputy President has been saying. He's expressed similar sentiments around, you know, looking at what's happening within a particular community. Are you speaking the same language as Deputy President Gachagua?
I don't think so. I do not think so at all. And all politics is local. Whether it is Ruto, whether it is Raila, everybody starts at their base. And it cannot only be wrong when Mount Kenya tries, people of Mount Kenya try to stand around their base.
So how would you
lead a national party.
How would you,
being in Kamwene or in Limuru 3 organization did not stop me for standing up for Kenya.
All right. I want to understand where you feel the point of differences between, you know, your philosophy around Kamwene and Limuru 3 and looking at Mount Kenya. Where do you think the point of difference is between your philosophy on that and the Deputy President?
I do not know what his philosophy is. All I know is that for the longest, he has been responsible for divide and rule. You remember it's the KK government that organized and actually attacked the Kenyatta farm. You remember it is the KK government that have days on end been insulting, berating other leaders from the mountain. I don't think you've ever had me standing to berate leaders from any place continuously. Criticizing their work, yes. We will say the KK government is not working. We will cite Ruto because he's the head of that regime. But you cannot tell me that we have similar philosophy. I will refuse 100%.
All right, I'd like us to stay with the Deputy President for a moment because there's matters of national interest surrounding him at the moment. Martha, there are reports of a possible plot to impeach the Deputy President. Do you think from what you've heard and what we've seen around the reports on this that there are grounds, significant grounds for his impeachment, or is this a political witch hunt? What are your thoughts?
I refuse to be drawn into issues that are purely diversionary. I see this as a Kenya Kwanza ploy to take people away from the demands of accountability by the Gen Z. I would expect that we would be discussing as a nation whether the demands of the Gen Z are rooted in the Constitution. I would expect that the Ruto regime would be telling us whether any of those demands is not rooted in the Constitution, but sending us helter-skelter, discussing petty plans within their administration. These are diversionary tactics. We must refuse as Kenyans. We must stay glued to the issues, to the fact that we have been lied to, that the Finance Act was withdrawn, yet the petrol levy has gone up with 7 shillings. That we have been lied to, that the offices of the First Lady, Second Lady, and Third Lady, if we could call the spouse to the CS for Foreign Affairs, Third Lady, we have been told their offices were to be abolished. We have seen they have been reinstated. We were told that the advisors were going to be scrapped. We are seeing everybody in place. In other words, Dr. William Ruto lied to Kenyans or gave them falsehoods when withdrawing the Finance Act. Everything is back to place, and obviously with the comfort of his newfound partnership with the ODM, it's more of the same that we are seeing. These are the issues we must not be diverted to. In fighting within the KK administration is purely their business.
Okay, I'd like to just finish up on that a little bit with following up on this. Is there something, Martha, you think about presidents and their deputies and the relationship therein that just seems to not be working, whether it is pre-2010 with the Constitution and even now? I mean, we saw that, after the 2013 election, and it would seem that that would be the same now. I know you call that diversionary tactics, but there seems to be a challenge because, Martha, even you are not with the person for whom you were a running mate less than 2 years ago. Is it a matter of shared values? Or is it just for the purposes of going through an election? You are currently not seeing eye to eye with the person with whom you were running mate less than 2 years ago. Now we're seeing, friction between the president and his deputy. What seems to be the relationship there? Is it just about winning an election and then seeing what happens afterwards? In your case, perhaps things, plans fell through after you didn't win the election. For others, you win the election and that's the end of the relationship.
I don't think it's something that has been there forever. President Kibaki and Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka had a very good relationship. So were the other deputies of President Kibaki, the late Kijana Wamalwa and Ankumudi. They had very good, cordial relationship. So this is a newfound thing that we are seeing. And once you run on one ticket, you must be able to work together, and it becomes completely untenable. You remember I was telling Uhuru and Ruto that they should both resign. They campaigned together. So perhaps Ruto and Gachagua should heed the call of the Gen Z. After all, mandate has been withdrawn from both of them directly by the people. Let them exit, give the country an occasion to go to elections and get other leaders. Yes, we have differed on principle with Raila Odinga, but there is no animosity between us.
Okay,
we remain friends, as one would say it, but we differ on principle.
Okay,
and even if we were in government, and this is something we both knew, that a day could come when we differ on principle, we would be able to discuss it, and that's what I used to say during the campaign. You discuss it in-house. But you see now, Raila sort of withdrew to campaign for the AU seat, for which he needs government backing. He has to be proposed by the government of Kenya. And I think this is where the trap fell. And you can see the timing of entering government is submission of his formal application. I think even within government, even if we had gone in together and something that is totally contrary to one's beliefs happen, it is possible to say enough is enough. I resigned from Kibaki's government. I didn't have to call him names. I just went back to the backbencher and enjoyed myself as a backbencher with less money, without power and privilege, but a happy backbencher. What we must understand as leaders, leadership is not a title deed, which you acquire and you wave at people saying this is for 5 years. It can be recalled by the people who bestow that privilege upon you. Also, events can make you exit earlier. People must get used to a vocabulary called resignation.
Let me ask, Martha.
This was in the developed democracies, the government of Ruto entire, they would have resigned without waiting for the Gen Z to be killed on the streets.
Okay, just a quick one. You know, you say you differ on principle, but in the course of this conversation, you've you know, talked about a point when you know, democracy in the country was muted by the relationship between Raila and Uhuru. In 2007, you were both on different sides of the political divide.
Opposite sides.
Yes, you know, less than 2 years ago, you were now together. I mean, you know, how would it be that somebody you have differed with in the past and then come together again, and less than 2 years later, you know, again, you are differing on principle, because principle, Martha, is a strong statement. It would be something that you would have seen shared ideals and shared values and principles. And some would question, you know, the political nature of this country. Somebody you have talked about in the past have said is muted democracy. Then you were with him in 2022. Here we are less than 2 years later. You are differing on principle. And it would seem that it's not just now. It was, you know, as early as last year. So is it that, you know, political formations are based on convenience at the time and not really a matter of principle? Because surely you are the same person, I would imagine you've been all these years, and Raila has been the same person. So how is it that, you know, the positions have differed so often, especially around elections?
Let's say this. We were on opposite sides in 2007. I voted for Kibaki and was his agent. You remember, I led also his side of the talks, the PNU side of the talks. But after that, we settled in government and we worked well with everyone, including Raila, who then became my boss as the Prime Minister. So we've never failed to have a working relationship. But there was that short spell of the election chaos where we completely differed. We both say we hold dear the same ideals. And even when we came together, I think we know each other well enough. And I am sure even when he chose me his running mate, he knew that there are some things that I would not agree with. We came together on a joint manifesto. And that manifesto spoke to me. Most of it had been done before I went into the coalition. but it spoke to me like it was a NARC-Kenya manifesto. Those are the ideals we held dear. But you can never know what somebody will do tomorrow. And if somebody does something you totally disagree with, you then agree to disagree. Then that happens whether in business, whether in politics, whether in life. And that's why even families separate. It's the nature of human life. But you must be able to agree that the point we have reached, it is better to agree to disagree. And that's what NARC-Kenya's withdrawal is about.
Okay.
And there are some things even today, perhaps, we may see eye to eye on. That is basically what it is.
All right. I want you to stay with me, Martha. Let's take a break briefly. And when we come back, we have much to talk about with you. We want to talk about what happens next. The protests, the young people, did the president really hear them when he said that? You know, he says now everything is solved. There's a broad-based government. There's reports of a planned protest on Thursday. And I also want to hear your thoughts on some of the laws that have been declared null and void by Parliament. When we come back, our conversation with Martha Karua, the NARC-Kenya party leader, continues. So please keep your views coming on that. This is The Explainer. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.